You wake up on the cold ground of a steppe plain. Your ears are ringing from the screams that tore across your village only hours ago. Smoke rises behind you. Bodies lie where they fell. The air tastes like ash. Then you hear it. The rhythmic crunch of hooves in the frost-hardened earth. A shadow blocks out the sun. A rider. Armor made of iron scales. A bow taller than you've ever seen. He's one of Genghis Khan's generals, a commander of 1,000 men. Behind him, dozens of captives, women from villages just like yours, tied together with leather thongs. He looks down at you, the way a merchant looks at livestock. This isn't a nightmare. This was Mongol conquest. And what I'm about to show you is the part of Mongol history they never teach in school. The dark system of captivity, exploitation, and selection rituals used by Genghis Khan's generals as they carved their empire across Asia. Not legend. Not myth. This is documented by Persian chroniclers, Chinese court records, and Rashid al-Din's official histories, written under Mongol supervision. If you stay to the end, you'll never see the Mongol Empire the same way again. Hollywood lied about the Mongols. You've seen the horses, the archers, the brilliant tactics, the myth of harsh justice and equality. But you haven't seen what happened in the hours after a city fell. Because for the Mongols, the conquest didn't end when the gates broke. It ended when every useful resource had been taken. Gold, skilled artisans, and yes, women. The Mongols had a system for this. Cold, efficient, mathematically precise. Modern historians call it the division ritual. The Mongols called it karyud, the sorting. Here's how it worked. When a city fell, whether in Khwarezm, Zhongdu, Nishapur, Kiev, or Merv, every surviving woman was driven into an open square or onto the steppe outside the walls. Eyewitness accounts describe thousands of women standing in lines that stretched farther than a man could shout. Then the sorting began. The Mongols divided women into 5 categories. 1. Noble or high-status women, reserved for the Khan's inner circle, the generals, the princes, and the ruling Borjigin clan. 2. Young and desirable women, taken immediately by officers and elite cavalry. 3. Skilled women, weavers, singers, dancers, healers, anyone who could be exploited economically. 4. Common captives, assigned as property to ordinary soldiers. 5. Women deemed useless, executed on the spot. This wasn't chaos. This was administration. Persian historian Juvayni writes, "They were sorted as merchants, sort fine silk from rough cloth." Think about that. Human lives processed like inventory. And now we reach the part almost every documentary avoids. What happened to the women in Category 1 and 2? Because the generals didn't just take captives. They ran an entire system of selection, control, and reproduction that fueled the Mongol ruling class for generations. The Mongols had a word for women seized on campaign: Gerega emegtai, women of the encounter. A chilling euphemism. These women were not considered wives, not concubines, not even slaves. They were spoils, used to bind loyalty among commanders. When a general distinguished himself in battle, the Khan rewarded him with a share of plunder, horses, and women. Rashid al-Din writes, "In the days after conquest, beautiful women were counted among the most precious gifts." To the Mongols, this wasn't scandalous. It was political. A female captive wasn't just a possession, she was a status symbol. Proof of rank, proof of favor, proof that the Khan trusted you enough to reward you in the same manner he rewarded his own sons. Now imagine you're one of these women. Your city has burned. Your family is dead. You've been marched for days across the steppe, starving, barefoot, chained to others. Then you reach the general's encampment. This isn't a wooden fortress. It's a cluster of felt tents, jeer, arranged in a perfect circle, guarded by elite warriors. Inside the largest tent stands the general himself, flanked by scribes. You're brought before him. You're inspected, not spoken to. Inspected, like a horse. Chroniclers tell us the general's steward checked teeth, hands, height, skin, hips, eyes. Not for beauty alone, but to judge your value as property. The Mongols were building an empire that needed people, and women were resources to be allocated. Chinese records from the Jin dynasty describe women's registries kept by Mongol commanders, listing captives by origin, skill, and function. One surviving ledger from Khwarezm lists women as fit for service, fit for the tents, fit for the soldiers, fit for disposal. Let that sink in. This wasn't random cruelty. This was bureaucracy. Now we enter the darkest part of the story. Because the fate of Category 1 women, the ones taken by generals, wasn't just sexual exploitation. It was political imprisonment. These women were confined inside guarded tent compounds called Ordagir, the women's camp. They could not leave. They could not refuse the general. They could not own property. They could not speak their own language publicly. They could not practice their religion. Their identities were erased. And the children they bore? They belonged not to the woman, but to the general. Mongol law stated, a child born in the Orda is the father's alone. If a woman resisted, she disappeared. Giovanni writes coldly, those who resisted were removed from the camp, and none ever saw them again. Archaeological digs in Mongolia and Kazakhstan have found mass burial pits filled with young women whose hands were bound with leather straps, matching the descriptions in Persian chronicles. But here's the part almost no one talks about. The generals used these women as political currency. A woman taken from Central Asia might be gifted to a Mongol prince. A woman from China might be traded to a powerful commander. A Korean captive might be sent as tribute to a steppe ally. A Persian woman could be forced into marriage to secure alliances. Women were diplomatic tools. The Mongols had a term, emegtai solik, the exchange of women. This exchange system shaped the entire empire. The genealogy of the Mongol ruling class, from Genghis Khan to Kublai, is built on the bodies of captive women whose names history erased. Now we reach the moment no one survived to describe, but the chroniclers hint at it. The first night, the general's tent, the guards standing outside, the door flap pulled shut. The Mongol Empire did not punish its commanders for anything they did to their captives. Persian historian Atamalik Giovanni writes, a general may do with his taken women as he pleases, for they are the prize of victory. This wasn't just accepted, it was expected. And if a general died, his captives were inherited by his sons, or redistributed to other commanders, or killed if they were no longer considered valuable. But the most chilling part of this system wasn't the violence, it was the scale. Historians estimate the Mongols took hundreds of thousands of women during their conquests, and genetic studies show something shocking. 16 million men living today carry the Y chromosome directly descended from Genghis Khan and his generals. 16 million. A biological footprint so massive it could only come from systematic, large-scale reproductive exploitation. The women behind those numbers. We don't know their names, not one. The chronicles didn't record them. The Mongols didn't preserve them. History didn't value them. But their DNA is still here, a silent witness to the darkest side of empire. Today, tourists visit Mongol museums and admire the saddles, the bows, the armor. They read about military brilliance and postal relay systems and steppe diplomacy. Almost no one knows the truth about the women's camps, the registries, the sorting rituals, the captivity wheels, the tent compounds guarded like prisons. But if you could stand on the steppe and listen long enough, if the wind carried the voices of the past, you would hear them. The women whose names history erased, the women who built the Mongol Empire with their suffering, the women taken by Genghis Khan's generals. If this exposed a chapter of history you've never heard before, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep uncovering the stories that empires worked hardest to bury. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next investigation into the darkest corners of the past.